The new stamp set, You Say Goodbye and I Say Hello by Becky Ohlers, is a fun and playful set featuring adorable images and greetings in other languages for international appeal. Today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you a fun little square card featuring this new set. Let me show you the tools and products you need to do this card. First, you're going to need some of the stamps from the new set by Becky Ohlers. I'm using the little chevron background stamp, and then I'm using this cute little coffee cup with the smiley face and the greeting Bonjour. Then you're going to need some markers, and I'm going to use 4 Copic markers. I have E57, which is light walnut. I have a colorless blender pen. I have YR24, which is pale sepia, and I have W1, which is warm gray number 1. Then I also have a memento marker, and this one is called Espresso Truffle. And I'm going to use this marker instead of an ink pad to ink up the coffee cup image, and I'll show you that in a minute. Then you're going to need some ink pads, and I'm using the Memento Peanut Brittle and the Espresso Truffle. I also have the Tim Holtz Craft Pick and a little piece of a mouse pad. I have a corner notcher, and this is by Tonic, and this is called the Ticket Tag Punch. A few 1/4 inch pop dots, some scissors, and some adhesive, and also some cardstock. And the cardstock I'm using is the Gina Designs 120 pound ivory cardstock. Now you can use our lighter weight cardstock also for your focal image, but I just happened to grab a piece of the 120 pound and I'm going to use that today. To begin, I'm going to start with some of the peanut brittle ink and the background stamp and this square piece of ivory cardstock that's cut to 3 3/4 inches square, 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. And I'm going to ink up this image. This is a big, long stamp. It makes fantastic backgrounds. You can line them all up very easily if you have the clear set, but I'm just going to use this for one little border along the edge. So, stamp that. There we go. So that gives me a nice little border along the edge. And I'm actually going to turn the card this way, but it's easier to stamp it when it's straight across instead of stamping it kind of on an angle there. Now, this little stamp that I'm going to use has a cute little smiley face on it, and that really makes cute cards. But you can also use this image without the smiley face by using a memento or other water-based marker instead of an ink pad to ink up the stamp. So you're just going to rub the marker over the surface of this stamp, making sure that you don't color in that little smiley face part. See how I'm just working my way around the stamp, making sure I have enough ink, and I need to just hit this part right here, staying away from the little face. Now some of that ink has already dried, so you're going to have to moisten it by huffing over the surface of the stamp. That means breathing warm, moist air over it to reactivate the ink. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to stamp it. Stamp it right about here. There we go. So you can see, now I'll stamp that for you off to the side here so you can see what it looks like with the little face, which is adorable. And you could do it either way. This is what that looks like with the little face. But without the face, then you have a little bit more of an opportunity to either do some paper piecing or some fancy coloring, and that's what I'm going to do next, right after I stamp my greeting. So using the Espresso Truffle ink, and that will match the marker perfectly, I'm going to stamp the Bonjour greeting right underneath that cup. And you don't have to speak French to know what that means. That's just a fun little card. Okay, so starting with the YR24 marker, which is pale sepia, I am going to color the top and the bottom panels of this cup. And I'm using the original markers, but you can use your chow markers or your sketch markers, or if you have a comparable color in another alcohol marker, you certainly can use that. You can use Bic markers. As long as they're an alcohol marker, you'll be able to do this little coloring technique I'm going to do. And this technique is pretty similar to one that I did about a week ago. But I wanted to do it again because everybody seemed to enjoy it, and I wanted to show you that it can be used with other images other than trees or flowers or leaves. So let me finish coloring this one, and then I'm going to grab that darker brown color and do that center panel. Okay. So here is the light walnut, the E57, and I'm going to color that right in this area. Now, many of you have probably gone to those coffee shops where they use that little cardboard protector around the center of the cup to make sure that the cup isn't too hot to hold. Well, that's what I'm going to create here using my colorless blender pen. I'll show you how I do that in just a second. And even if you don't have Copic markers, if you have the Bic markers, the colorless blender pen will work with just about any alcohol markers. So I'm going to start by taking my colorless blender pen and I'm going to do lines going down this cup. Like that. And see how that just pulls the ink right off? And then to jazz it up a little bit more, I'm going to add a few polka dots just by coloring colorless blender randomly over this part of the cup. This just gives it a lot of depth and interest. And it does take the place of paper piecing, which is a fun technique, but sometimes you just don't have time or you don't have the right colors of pattern paper. So this is a great way to get a fun look. Now I'm going to take the warm gray #1 marker and I'm going to do a little accent around the outside of the card. I'm going to use the bullet tip and just run that right along the outside. Now you've seen me do this before with the BG10 marker, the cool shadow marker, but I wanted to give this a little bit of a warmer shadow going around, so I've opted to use the warm gray marker instead. And you just need a very slight little line going around. And then I want to add a little gray line in here and just a little gray line right along the edge of that scallop in both of these, just to create a little bit more depth in that coffee cup. Now my next step is to notch out these corners, and I'm just going to do 2 corners. You don't always have to do all 4 corners when you're working with a card. So I'm going to do this corner, and all you do when you're using this punch is just line up the corner into the guide and punch, and you get a nice little chomp out of the corner there. And do the bottom one also. And this whole panel is going to get mounted on top of a piece of dark chocolate cardstock. And you can see on our heavyweight ivory cardstock, you still will get some bleed through with the Copic markers. The only cardstock we carry that doesn't bleed through to the other side is our 120-pound or heavy base weight, we call it, white cardstock. Okay, So now I'm going to grab that little piece of mouse pad and just stick that under there, and using my pick, I'm going to poke a hole there, and I'm going to poke a hole down here. There we go. And then I grabbed a little pack of copper brads. These came in my Stamp TV kit. So I'm going to use a couple of these and add a little copper brad into the corner, like that. And if you have other color brads, you might have a warm mustardy yellow that you want to use, or an ivory brad. That's fine. You can use gold. But I happen to have quite a few copper ones laying around, so I decided to use those instead. Now, if you ever are putting a brad into the corner like this, and you see how that is sticking out, it's protruding outside of the card panel. See that? All you have to do is grab a pair of these Tim Holtz scissors, and you can just slip your scissors under there, grabbing that little end, like that. And then cover it with your hand and close your eyes and cut. Normally, it won't shoot, but it can, so you want to make sure you always protect your eyes. So let's do the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just slip the scissors under there. You can see I have it there, like that. And cover it, close my eyes, and there we go. So now I have my brads. My final step for this card is to attach it to an ivory card base. And this ivory card base is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inches when it's folded in half. And I'm going to attach it with some pop dots. And the reason why I'm using the pop dots is because these brads create a little bit of bulk, and it's not quite so easy to get it to lie perfectly flat. But by using that 1/4 inch pop dot, it gives me just a little bit of a loft so that I don't have to worry about it not laying down nice and flat and even on all 4 sides. There we go. Now, one last little thing you can do if you want to is you can take that warm gray #1 marker, and whether you have the sketch marker or the original markers, your chows, it doesn't matter. Just use either the brush tip, or if you have the original, you can use the little bullet tip, and just do a little squiggly line kind of coming out of the cup. So it looks like steam coming out of that nice warm cup of coffee. And there is my finished card. The little images with those cute little faces make adorable cards, but using markers instead of ink pads allows you to stamp them with or without the faces, doubling your creative options.